This is the Farm Monitor. For over 50 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by one of the largest general farm organizations, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Bergamy.
All right, come a little closer, don't be shy. Kenny B once again on assignment, so it's just me, Ray DeLessio, holding down the fort until he rejoins me on the set. Nonetheless, you're really going to like this show, especially if you're a fan of beef cattle. Straight ahead, it's yet another example of how the Georgia Cattlemen's Association is working for its producers. We'll tell you what they're doing in hopes of fixing that supply chain between the farm and the grocery store. This guy here, well, that's Cattleman Joseph Egloff of Rocking Chair Ranch in Monroe County, and boy, does he have an amazing story to tell. It's the story of how he turned his hobby into a full-time operation by using the farm-to-table concept. Plus, bet you didn't know most of the mushrooms we eat here in Georgia are imported. Well, researchers at Kennesaw State University are hoping to change that. John Holcomb with the how and why. These stories and so much more start right now on the Farm Monitor. After selling their cattle for more than $170 per pound back in 2014, beef producers saw prices fall to less than half that once the pandemic hit. And while prices are slowly starting to rebound, they're not nearly the same as those at the grocery store. Devin Jones tells you what the Georgia Cattlemen's Association is doing to close that gap and why there is plenty of reason for optimism.
Walk through the meat section of any grocery store and you'll notice the price of beef is on the rise. But despite that and the rapidly growing consumer demand, cattlemen have yet to see that translate into bigger returns for their product.
The cattle industry has been on a roller coaster ride in the recent months, especially with the disparity we've seen in the box beef prices versus what the producers are seeing. One thing that we're hopeful for is that, and appreciative of, is that demand, specifically consumer demand, has remained strong. In fact, we actually eclipsed poultry in protein demand over the past few months, and we look to hope to capitalize on that and continue that forward.
It's an issue the Georgia Cattlemen's Association, as well as state legislation, is very well aware of as they look to strengthen the partnership between the producers and the processors.
One of the things that we've been working on is finding capital sources for processing plants, but also we know that labor is a big backlog, and I know that labor impacts every segment of the American economy right now. We're dealing with a shortfall of the amount of people that are willing to go in and do those jobs day in and day out. And so one of the other things that GCA hopefully will be working on very shortly is a labor training program.
However, that is easier said than done as the recent pandemic has wreaked havoc on the supply chain. While that issue is slowly starting to resolve itself, GCA is also looking at ways to speed up that process.
We want to make sure that we're not only on the menu, but we want to have a seat at the table. We want to see that transparency from those packers. What are their pricing mechanisms, and how are those going to benefit the producer in the long run? And so we'll continue to work on that. We appreciate all of our Senate and House delegations. I know they've been putting a spotlight on that issue and concern that we've had in the past few months. We continue to hope to move some of that momentum forward as we see what they do in the rest of their congressional session.
Now, despite some of the obstacles that need to be overcome, there is still plenty of reason to believe 2021 can be a strong year for the cattle industry.
I'm optimistic that prices will continue to start to increase for the producer, similarly to what we saw back in the 2014 era. I don't think we're going to get to that top dollar amount like we had in the past, but I think ultimately prices from the producer side should start to incrementally go up. We're excited to see that, and we're hopeful that that will continue. But again, the only way that we can keep meeting that demand is to keep putting that beef on their plate, on consumers' plates, and so we can't do that without strong processing infrastructure.
Reporting from Towns County, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
Broadening the ag industry in Georgia. That's one of the goals of research being done at Kennesaw State University in hopes of expanding mushroom production here in Georgia, while at the same time helping the industry be more sustainable. Our John Holcomb made the trip to Cobb County and spent time with the people heading up the project.
Here in Georgia, we're mostly known for our big commodities like peaches, peanuts, and cotton. However, thanks to research being done by Kennesaw State University, the state could soon be known for its growing of mushrooms. something that could be economically and sustainably beneficial since most mushrooms consumed by Georgians are having to be imported.
Historically, the majority of mushrooms that are eaten in Georgia are grown outside the state. We wanted to approach this differently because there's no reason why Georgia isn't producing mushrooms. We have all the materials and the capacity, and with the application of some very basic technology, it becomes incredibly economically feasible and accessible to Georgia agriculturalists.
According to experts like Corneliuson, growing mushrooms is not that difficult.
Cultivating mushrooms can be quite straightforward. Mushrooms are the sexual fruiting body of various fungi, and these fungi will exist both as microscopic filamentous forms that then will colonize a substrate. This could be something like peanut hulls, and then if you hold them at the correct temperature for the correct period of time with the right humidity, they will form these fruiting body structures, which are what we call mushrooms and are the edible portion of the life cycle.
One food source for mushrooms is waste. And thankfully, with Georgia being such a big agricultural producing state, there's certainly plenty of waste that can be used.
Commercially produced agricultural waste, which typically is either burned or composted, can actually be used first as a substrate for growing the mushrooms. Again, it's a food source. Mushrooms will colonize it, they'll eat up some of that food, and then when we're done, we can actually use that spent substrate as compost for gardening or for large-scale agricultural cultivation.
Not only are they working to prove mushroom production can be a great addition here in Georgia, but they're also working on showing what all mushrooms can be grown here in the state.
Another key goal of our research here is not just showing that we can grow culinary mushrooms in Georgia, but actually expanding the portfolio of these culinary mushrooms which can be grown in Georgia. Currently, much of the specialty mushroom market is serviced by only a small subset of varieties which are cultivatable. What we're interested in doing here is bringing in some new varieties which are already grown abroad and are typically imported. We believe that by demonstrating the feasibility of growing these mushrooms here in the state of Georgia, we can help this burgeoning market of culinary mushrooms grow, and in a way that allows farmers and producers to maintain a certain price point or a certain economic feasibility. Because if everybody starts growing the same 2 or 3 mushrooms, prices are going to drop. But if we can expand that portfolio, then they can maintain a sustainable operation economically.
Reporting in Kennesaw for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
John, thanks so much. When we come back,
there's no place I'd rather be. Some people like the beach or the mountains. I'm just as happy. I'd rather be out here with these cattle than I had to be on a golf course or at a Braves game or anywhere.
beef producers drive for miles to give Joseph Egloff their business. See for yourself why when the Farm Monitor continues. Yes, it is true about a picture being worth 1,000 words. But that picture behind me can be summed up in one simple word, and that's happy. As the CEO and owner of Rocking Chair Ranch Cattle in Forsyth, Georgia, Joseph Egloff is at his happiest when he's around his cows and his colorful Brahman bull named Moses. He's also happy about the incredible growth Rocking Chair Ranch has experienced in just 10 years. But deep down inside, what Joseph is really happy about is knowing that his late father is looking down from above, himself smiling and saying, "Son, thank you for honoring my memory."
There's no place I'd rather be. Some people like the beach or the mountains. I'm just as happy. I'd rather be out here with these cattle than I had to be on a golf course or at a Braves game or anywhere.
After spending what amounted to a day and a half with them, trust me when I say that Joseph Egloff was put on this earth for one thing, and that's to breed cattle. Originally from Mississippi, he's a man with both a big hat and a big heart. Watching him on the ranch, it's hard to believe that at one point in his life, Joseph actually had a day job in addition to running, at the time, was a much smaller cattle operation. Still, deep down inside, he always knew being a full-time rancher was his true calling.
My daddy and my mother went and looked at a farm that was down the road from where we lived. And it had a little ranch-style house on it with a big front porch. And he told my mother that they were going to buy it, name it Rocking Chair Ranch, and sit on the front porch and watch the kids grow up. And that was in the summer of '71. That October, my daddy passed away. And my mother married another horse and cow man. And then 45 years later, we came up with the idea to have a farm-to-table product. And I didn't want to call it Joseph's Burger or Joseph's Beef. And I asked my mother what she thought about me using Rocking Chair Ranch. And she liked it, and so that's where it came from.
And so here we are today. That one-time hobby farm with just 8 head of cattle on 25 acres of land, now a massive operation along the country setting of rural Georgia. Joseph says it was a friend who approached him about providing beef for that farm-to-table operation. From that point on, he knew it was all or nothing. That's when he officially became a full-time rancher. Although he admits there was a learning curve.
I thought, well, I can do that. That's simple enough. Didn't realize at the time all you had to do to get your license, your label, find a processor that could process to be sold to the public. And we did that. And my original goal was 12 head a year. I thought that's what I could do. And by about year 3 or 4, I was up to nearly 50 head and was renting land everywhere that I could find it, and rented this farm here, and was later able to buy it because going farm to table. I could have never done it without doing it any other way. I couldn't, conventionally selling my cattle at the stockyard, I couldn't have done it.
Which brings us to yet another leap of faith Joseph took, the USDA certified Mid-South Packers. Located within the Rocking Chair Ranch property, Joseph says his reason for building Mid-South was simple math, really, adding, it certainly wasn't rocket science. No, for Joseph, it was more like rocking chair science.
Everybody has to make a living, and when you take your cattle to the stockyard and unload them, there's a half a dozen people that's got to make money off that before it gets to the consumer. Well, if you do all the legwork from your farm to the consumer, you get those rewards also. And that's been what I've tried to preach to. And we've probably got about 70 farmers that come into Mid-South now that are doing that very same thing, and it's, to be honest with you, it's a really good feeling. We get credit for being an animal welfare approved facility, but we would do the same thing whether we were or not, because it's the right thing to do for bunches of different reasons. If the cattle are not stressed, they don't get the adrenaline, you don't have dark cutters, and there's no need of making it a bad place. And we have a vet that comes every week. We have a USDA inspector that's here every day to make sure that we handle cattle properly. Some of these unregulated facilities are just worried about numbers. And yes, we're worried about numbers. We've got payroll to make and got to keep the power bill paid and stuff like that. But a lot of what we do because of the animal. Keep the animals put here on earth to provide food, but that doesn't mean it has to be a miserable life.
With that said, it's easy to see why the people Joseph comes in contact with describe him as driven, compassionate, protector of the land, and just an overall great person. An example would be his business model. Despite raising grass-fed beef, Joseph says he's an advocate for all practices.
Everybody can't eat grass-fed beef. If we tried to feed America on grass-fed beef alone, there's no way that we could feed everybody that needs to be fed. We have to have some of these larger commercial facilities. Beef would become so expensive, only the very, very wealthy could afford it. We would like to put a a retail outlet somewhere in town, close to the interstate, that could offer a butcher shop and have grain-fed, grass-fed, some ready-to-eat products, but maybe have a little cafe in there. Georgia's got it. Everything you need to have, Georgia grows it, and that's what I'd like to see in the next 5 years.
He is a true cattleman, let me tell you. Well, up next, taking action for America's local food. That's the motto of the Conservation Fund. And now a new program within the fund is making it easier than ever to break down barriers. Again, that's coming up next when the Farm Monitor continues.
I'm Lee Dickey, co-owner here at Dickey Farms in Musella, Georgia, and we've been growing peaches for over 120 years. Dickey Farms was started by my great-great-grandfather. He first planted peach trees in 1897, and with the first harvest being in 1900. And it's been in our family the whole time. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father. So my grandfather's still alive, and my father's very much still a part of the business. So my grandfather still comes out to the farm every day and rides around and is very much a part of the action. And my dad is very much involved. So it's very much a family business. It takes everybody, takes a lot of hands to make everything come off. Peaches have been grown here a really long time, and part of it is the weather, another part's the soil. You know, one thing that Georgia's known for is how good the peaches are, how sweet the peaches are. So the climate, the soil, all those things play a major factor into where peaches are grown here. Interesting, the changes that have happened in terms of our farm market over the years. Used to, there was lots and lots of roadside stands just selling peaches and fresh produce, and I think as those have declined and the consumers are looking more to interact with the farms and know where their food and produce comes from, I think a lot of the big growers like ourselves have opened up farm markets. And you know, one thing we've gotten really well known for, we're making homemade fresh peach ice cream every day, and so I think a lot of people have gotten to know us for our ice cream, but certainly for our peaches. Year-round, full-time employees, we have about 12 to 15, and then in the peak of the summer it spikes up to over 120 employees. We have a very rigorous food safety program. We're part of we use a global GAP audit scheme, so it's a very rigorous methodology that we follow in terms of the things that we do and the precautions we take in terms of hand washing, handling the fruit, everything from the boxes they go in to anything that we use on the farm, even how we harvest and plant our rows and soil erosion. So it goes deeper than just the handling of the fruit. It's kind of an overall picture of the farm, and we get an audit every year, so it's a pretty strenuous program. The farm gate value of peaches is around 30 to 35 million, with an overall economic impact in the state of around 70 to 80 million. I'm Lee Dickey, and I'm proud to be a Georgia peach grower.
And we are proud to have you in Georgia, Lee. Finally this week, given the exorbitant cost of starting up a new farm, it's no wonder the average age of farmers in the U.S. is approaching 60. With land being one of the major expenses, especially around developing cities, the Conservation Fund has launched a new program aimed at making it more accessible to beginning farmers and those looking to expand. It's called the Working Farms Fund. To find out more on who it benefits and its long-range outlook, the Monitor traveled to Newton County and sought out the expertise of Working Farms Fund Associate Christian Barza.
The Working Farms Fund is an innovative, first-of-its-kind pilot program that we're running here in Georgia. It is a program that breaks down barriers to farmland ownership and creates farmland access opportunities for farmers in the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. We're going to transition more land in the next 10 years than we did in the last 30 years. And that farmland is under threat of being developed. It's under threat of not being maintained as successful working farmland.
The biggest roadblock was land. Land is expensive, especially in the Atlanta area. I mean, I've farmed all across Georgia, so I know there is, other options, but it's so far from any major markets, it's hard to make that business sustainable financially.
The Conservation Fund steps out and makes a purchase of a property, one of the critically threatened farmland properties, and we buy the land, we immediately match a farmer to that property, and they begin leasing the property in a lease-to-own format with us.
The startup costs surrounding a farm, for us, we're doing a 20-acre farm and we're looking to raise about $500,000 for the next 5 years. If we had to purchase the land that we're working on, that number would be closer to $1.1, $1.2 million. So creating access to land is a huge benefit for us as small business owners, as folks starting a business, as folks starting a farm.
At the end of the process, we use something called a permanent conservation easement, which results in removing the development rights on the property and ensures that the farmer can afford the property on the back end of our ownership. The farmer then buys the property directly from the Conservation Fund, while the conservation easement remains on the property to ensure that that property remains in farming forever.
We wanted to support agricultural communities because you can see it as you go around Georgia, that we are really at risk of losing one of the most defining characteristics of our rural landscape, and that is the family farm.
So we anticipate that in the next 20 years, we are going to have 200 farms operating in the rural metro Atlanta area, delivering food to our communities through programs like the program we have with Emory University, which is a partnership that ensures that farmers in our program are able to sell directly to Emory University.
One of the things with the COVID pandemic is we've seen the vulnerability of our supply chain, and the farther out that goes, the more vulnerable it becomes. So it's really wise for us to think about how can we purchase locally enough food for our hospitals and our campus cafeterias. All of these institutions together, if all of us pool our procurement power, think about what we could do in terms of supporting a new generation of farmers.
Unfortunately, our time together for this week has come to a close. However, before we send you on your way, a friendly reminder that for all the latest ag news regarding food, recipes, and what's happening on Georgia farms, be sure you check out all of our social media platforms, including farm-monitor.com. You'll stay informed and see what's up in the world of agriculture and with us here at the show. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time right here on the Farm Monitor. Have a great week.